In the 16th century, a man walked into the heart of feudal Japan. He wasn't born there. He didn't look like anyone they had ever seen, and within 2 years, he was standing at the side of the most powerful warlord in the entire country, as a samurai. His story sounds like it was invented for a film. A foreigner from across the world, rising through a rigid, closed society to earn a sword, a stipend, and the trust of a man who terrified all of Japan. But he was real. His name, the name Japan gave him, was Yasuke. And what makes his story remarkable isn't just how far he came. It's that after one of the most dramatic nights in Japanese history, he simply vanished. This is the story of the African samurai. What we know, what we don't, and why the world almost forgot him entirely. The year is 1579. A ship carrying Jesuit missionaries arrives on the shores of Japan. Among them is a high-ranking Italian priest named Alessandro Valignano, an inspector for the Jesuit order, and traveling with him is a tall African man. We don't know his birth name. We don't know exactly where he was born. Historians have suggested Mozambique and other parts of Africa, but the honest answer is that his origins are uncertain. What the records do tell us is that he was tall, he was strong, and he had likely arrived in the service of the Jesuits, possibly as a guard or attendant. To understand what happens next, you have to understand the Japan he stepped into. This was Sengoku Japan, the age of warring states. For over a century, rival warlords had torn the country apart fighting for control. It was a society defined by a rigid hierarchy, honor, and suspicion of outsiders. Foreigners were rare. An African man was almost unheard of. And so, wherever this man went, he drew enormous crowds. People had never seen anyone like him. According to Jesuit accounts, the crowds that gathered to see him were so large and so frantic that people were injured in the crush. Word of the remarkable foreigner spread quickly, and eventually that word reached the ears of the most powerful man in Japan. His name was Oda Nobunaga, and in 1581 he was closer than anyone in a century to unifying all of Japan under a single ruler. Nobunaga was brilliant, ruthless, and famously unpredictable. He embraced foreign ideas and technology when it suited him, firearms, Western goods, new tactics, and he was intensely curious. When he heard about the African man drawing crowds, he demanded to see him for himself. What happened at that meeting became one of the most famous anecdotes of the era. When Nobunaga first saw the man's dark skin, he reportedly did not believe it was real. He was convinced the color must be ink or paint applied to the skin, so he ordered the man to strip to the waist and wash. The man scrubbed, and the color did not change. It was real. And in that moment, Nobunaga's disbelief turned into something else entirely. Fascination. Here was a man unlike anyone in his court. Tall. The records describe him as around 6 feet 2, towering over the Japanese of the era. Powerful. Reportedly with the strength of many men. And crucially, he could speak. He had picked up some Japanese, and Nobunaga was captivated by the ability to actually talk with him. Nobunaga did something almost no warlord of the era would do with a foreigner. He didn't just dismiss him as a curiosity. He decided to keep him close. He took the man into his own service, and he gave him a name, Yasuke. From this point on, Yasuke's rise was extraordinary. Nobunaga didn't keep him as a servant or a novelty. He brought him into his inner circle. According to the accounts, Yasuke was given a residence of his own. He was given a stipend, a salary, and he was given a sword. Now this is where we have to be careful and honest, because it matters. Historians genuinely debate whether Yasuke held the formal, official rank of samurai in the way we understand it today. What the records support is this. He was given a stipend, a private residence, and a weapon, and he served Nobunaga directly as a retainer. To many historians, that combination is exactly what defined a samurai in that era. To others, the evidence is less certain. What is not in doubt is that a foreigner, an African man, had been elevated to a position of trust and honor that was almost unthinkable in that time and place. The accounts suggest the two men grew close. Nobunaga reportedly enjoyed Yasuke's company, spoke with him often, and even, by some accounts, dined with him, a rare honor. Yasuke was frequently at Nobunaga's side. He wasn't hidden away. He was a visible, trusted member of the household of the man on the verge of ruling all of Japan. And Yasuke didn't just stand around at court. He accompanied Nobunaga on campaign. He was there as a warrior, present with Nobunaga's forces during a turbulent, violent period. For a brief window of time, a man who had arrived as a stranger from across the world had become part of the story of Japan itself. But that window was about to slam shut in Fire and Betrayal. June 1582. Nobunaga was staying at a temple in Kyoto called Honnō-ji with only a small guard. He believed he was safe. He was, after all, the most powerful man in Japan, on the very brink of total victory. He had no idea that one of his own top generals was about to betray him. That general was Akechi Mitsuhide. For reasons still debated by historians to this day, Mitsuhide turned his army around and marched it not against Nobunaga's enemies, but against Nobunaga himself. In the pre-dawn darkness, thousands of soldiers surrounded the temple at Honnō-ji. The attack was sudden and overwhelming. Nobunaga's tiny guard was hopelessly outnumbered. The temple was set ablaze, and Yasuke was there. He fought in the defense of his lord, in the middle of the chaos and the flames. But there was no stopping what was coming. Cornered and defeated, with the temple burning around him, Nobunaga took his own life rather than be captured, dying by the ritual of seppuku. The man who had almost united Japan was gone, but Yasuke did not give up. After Nobunaga's death, he made his way to the forces of Nobunaga's son and heir, Oda Nobunaga, who was making his own desperate stand nearby. Yasuke joined that fight too. He kept fighting for the family he served, even after his lord was dead, even when the cause was already lost. Eventually, Yasuke was captured by Akechi Mitsuhide's men, and here the story takes its final strange turn. When Yasuke was brought before the victors, they had to decide what to do with him. A captured enemy warrior would normally expect death, but according to the accounts, Mitsuhide reportedly declared that Yasuke was not a Japanese man, and treated him differently as a result. Rather than execute him, Mitsuhide is said to have ordered that Yasuke be taken and handed back to the Jesuits, returned to the Christian church he had originally come with. The very thing that made Yasuke an outsider may, in the end, have saved his life. And that is where the historical record ends. After he was handed back to the Jesuits in 1582, Yasuke disappears from history. We don't know where he went. We don't know how long he lived, or where, or how his story ended. He simply steps out of the pages of history and is gone. One of the most extraordinary figures of the era, and we don't even know how his life finished. For centuries Yasuke was little more than a footnote, a strange half-forgotten detail in the chronicles of Nobunaga's reign, but in recent decades the world has rediscovered him. Historians, authors and artists have pieced together the fragments of his story from the Jesuit letters and the Japanese chronicles that recorded his existence, and what we're left with is a story that is equal parts inspiring and haunting. A man who crossed the entire world, who rose against every expectation of his era to stand beside one of history's great warlords, who fought with loyalty and courage when everything fell apart, and whose ending is a blank space we may never fill. That's the thing about untold figures. Sometimes history doesn't forget them because they were unimportant. Sometimes it forgets them because no one bothered to write the last chapter. Yasuke deserved to be remembered, and now you'll remember him too. If this story moved you, subscribe. Next time we descend into something much darker, the story of a countess accused of being one of the most prolific killers in human history. Her name was Elizabeth Bathory. I'm glad you're here. I'll see you in the next one.